Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our first Commonwealth conversation of 2022. I'm Brooke Thomson, the Executive Vice President of Government Affairs at Associated Industries of Massachusetts, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all here today. It's an honor and a pleasure to have with us today as our inaugural 2022 Commonwealth Conversation speaker, our Attorney General, Maura Healey. We're thrilled to have her with us today. She is going to go over at a high level some of her office's priorities for this year, and then more importantly, she's going to dive into some questions that we have from some of our members. Before we get started, I do want to go over a few housekeeping issues with respect to the platform. We are not going to do a live Q&A today in this webinar. However, if you have questions either for a member of the AIM team or for the Attorney General, you can type it into the question pane over on the side and then just click send. Also, you will find a copy of the PowerPoint that you see before you over in the handout pane. And most importantly, in this virtual world we live in, we have a lot of technical issues. Hopefully we don't have any here today, but if you do have any issues just getting in or having the ability to send a question, please reach out to Sarah Ratowski. She's fantastic. She's part of our events team, and you can see her email right there. So lastly, we are going to try to cover a lot of information in the next 60 minutes. That is why I am going to quit talking here in a second. And for those of you who know me, you know that is a rare feat. But following today's webinar, if you have any questions and you want to reach out to anyone on my team, we will provide that contact information at the end of the program. Also, if you are an AIM member and you have a question, you know we have our employer hotline where you can reach us. So let's dive right into today's conversation. I'm thrilled to be able to introduce our primary sponsor for today's Commonwealth conversation, Christina Fisher of Amazon. Christina is not only a fantastic regional public policy leader for Amazon here in the Northeast, I also get to call her a colleague and a friend. We have worked together for quite some time. Prior to being at Amazon, Christina served as the Northeast Executive Director, for TechNet, a national bipartisan trade association of over 80 technology companies advocating for policies that advance the innovation economy. Christina holds a JD from Suffolk University Law School and is a graduate of American University. I'm thrilled to turn the program over now to Christina so she can introduce our keynote speaker, the Attorney General. Christina?
Thank you, Brooke, and good morning to everyone on today's webinar. I'm thrilled to be here today to partner with AIM, highlight Amazon's dedication to the Massachusetts economy, and most of all, to introduce the Attorney General, who has graciously agreed to walk us through some of her office's plans for 2022. It's a privilege to kick off the event today and to introduce a policymaker focused on ensuring Massachusetts is a place where businesses and workers can thrive. We share this commitment at Amazon. Just this spring, we are opening the first of 2 towers as part of our Boston's Tech Hub expansion. The first building is expected to host 2,000 Amazonians, followed by an additional 3,000 in the second building. This expansion will bring good jobs to the state, including technology roles in software development, artificial intelligence, machine learning, along with non-tech corporate roles in product management, HR, finance, and more. Amazon believes in and invests in Massachusetts, and that's why our commitment to ensuring an economically vibrant future is so important. Currently, Amazon employs more than 3,700 people in our Boston Tech Hub, and just last fall, we opened a new robotics manufacturing facility in Westboro, creating an additional 200 high-tech manufacturing jobs. We believe in Massachusetts and look forward to continuing our investments. This brings me to why I'm here today, to introduce our fantastic speaker and State Attorney General. Maura Healey began serving as Massachusetts Attorney General in January of 2015 and is leading the People's Law Firm as the People's Lawyer, continuing a career spent fighting for justice and equal rights. After Maura's historic victory and her first ever run for office, she spent her time working on issues that matter most to the people of the Commonwealth, from healthcare and energy costs to protecting consumers, ensuring equality for all, and keeping our community safer. For 7 years prior to her election, Maura helped lead the Attorney General's office, ultimately overseeing more than half of the office's 500 employees. Early in her career, Maura was a prosecutor in Middlesex County and a litigation partner at WilmerHale. After college, she spent 2 years as a 5'4" starting point guard on a professional basketball team in Europe. It is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Attorney General Maura Healey.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Christina, for that introduction. Good to hear about all the developments going on with Amazon here in the Commonwealth. We want to thank, especially this morning, my team wants to thank Brooke Thomson and the team at Associated Industries in Massachusetts for your continuing dialogue, communication, partnership over the years on so many fronts. You've been a key go-to for me and my team when we think about the various policy issues we're confronting and the like. So it's great to be able to be with you today. Wish I could be in person with all of you. I know that is coming soon, but for now, great to see you on this webinar. And I guess I wanted to say a couple things to start. I don't know how you're all doing. You've been through and continue to go through so much. These last couple of years have impacted everyone in so many ways. But for our business community, identifying, finding ways to keep things going, to stay afloat when confronting challenge after challenge after challenge, having been tested in ways you've never been tested before. I just want to say thank you for your resilience and for hanging in. And while I'm optimistic that we are moving through this pandemic, we are starting to return to work. Some of us, we were starting to really engage in the way that we were in the past. I know the effects of this linger on. I have seen the very best in people across the state. I love this state. I love our people. We have the greatest collection of human capital, intellectual capital, know-how, innovation, can-do companies. And, you know, it's a really, really amazing place, Massachusetts. And here in this time, amidst a lot of heartache and heartbreak and challenge, I've also seen the very, very best in people. And, you know, for me, I guess as I look forward, I think we have an opportunity to build on some of the lessons that we've learned, to fix what isn't working, and, you know, to fundamentally make life better for our residents and our communities as we move forward. And as has always been my view, it is strong collaboration between business and government that has been and will continue to be such an integral thing to moving residents and families and communities forward here in the state. When I think about innovation and resilience, you know, I think about how the business community has come back. I mean, over 500,000 jobs have been added to our economy. Labor force participation rate has increased by more than 5%. I think that businesses have done an incredible job adjusting to the pandemic's demands, whether it was expanding access to online ordering, helping to manufacture PPE in the early days. Businesses, large and small, and our nonprofits have had to be nimble and have had to adapt when faced with challenges caused by supply chain shortages of everything from semiconductors to chicken wings to paper bags. And I've seen this innovation and resilience firsthand in my travels across Massachusetts. The restaurants in Worcester that joined together to provide free meals to local households, a mattress manufacturing company in Brockton that shifted to making face masks. Just last month, I was in Holyoke visiting at a Colombian restaurant that opened during COVID, amazingly enough, and it's thriving. I know that many of you, as I said, are still struggling with workforce and labor costs, heating costs, as well as supply chain issues. And those are real challenges that we need to work on regionally as a country and certainly as a state. But, you know, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about planning for a future here where hopefully everyone can prosper and no one is left behind. And I think it starts with acknowledging right now the high cost of living that folks are facing. You know, family budgets are strained right now. Childcare, housing, transportation, gas, everything is more expensive, we know, and that is a real issue here. We need to also invest in workforce development. I know that there are just so many industries, companies that are not able to fill the jobs that they need to fill right now. We have to address that. We've got to create more affordable career pathways, immediate pathways for people, and develop the pipeline of the skilled labor, of the talented workforce to meet the needs of businesses across our state. We need to have an aggressive vision and also an achievable implementation plan for how our state should address the climate crisis and make the transition to a clean energy economy. And on all of these fronts, I firmly believe that we are only going to do this by working together, by finding ways together to promote growth and prosperity, and to make sure that we're doing this in thoughtful ways. And that's what I've appreciated about this group, because over the years we've been able to have a lot of conversations to work through and think through issues. And I firmly believe, maybe it goes back to my roots as a point guard, that together as a team, we can build an even stronger economy that will help every family in the state thrive. I'd like to take a minute to talk about childcare. I know this has been on the minds of many employers around the state, certainly something that I've dealt with in running my own office of 550 people. The impact of this pandemic, while our economy is on track to make a recovery, not everyone is thriving. The most recent jobs report shows that men have regained nearly all the jobs that they lost since February 2020, but we can't say the same for women. Since February 2020, 1.1 million women who've left the workforce have yet to return. This is the lowest rate of women's workforce participation since the late 1980s. So while we've been inching back, the pandemic really has set us years behind when it comes to women in the workforce. Black and Latino women have been especially hard hit. Their unemployment rates remain disproportionately high. National and statewide figures also tell us that many Black and Latino women have left the workforce and have stopped looking for work altogether. Now, one of the reasons for this is the uneven share of caregiving responsibilities that women have taken on during the pandemic, faced with continuous school and childcare disruptions. We saw this happen 2 years ago when our childcare system shut down. Our kids struggled, parents couldn't work, our businesses and our economy suffered the consequences. Here we are 2 years later, and we still have 10% fewer childcare slots than we had before the pandemic. And this just isn't working. The cost, the lack of affordable access to childcare is a big problem. Center-based infant care, I don't have to tell many of you this, you know this, costs an average of $21,000 a year in Massachusetts. It's the second highest in the country after Washington, D.C. In Greater Boston, the average family is paying annually just over $35,000 for at-home care and about $15,000 for center-based care. This kind of cost is too expensive for too many parents, and it keeps them out of the workforce. We're just not going to have the economic recovery that we need without childcare, and it's why I urge the federal government to dedicate recent stimulus funds to address the problem. Seeing the American Rescue Plan direct $40 billion to childcare was an important start. And here in Massachusetts, we need to be looking at what more we need to do to get us into universal early education, which will support greater workforce participation, particularly among women and people of color. Not only is this a huge economic issue, it's an education issue, and it's a cost of living issue for so many. So let's recognize our childcare system for what it is. It's part of the infrastructure that we need to support families, workforce, and economy. Another just fundamental is housing. And I travel around the state, and I know rents are up, mortgages are eating a bigger slice of the pie in terms of people's pocketbooks. And it's an issue around the state. So if we're going to build an economy where everyone can thrive, we do need to address some of the high costs in the state, and housing, is high on this list. The median cost of a single-family home in Massachusetts last year was about $530,000. In Greater Boston, it was $636,000. That's an amazing increase of nearly 40%. And in order to attract and retain the top talent and skilled workers you need, people have to be able to live here. And our lack of affordable housing has reached a crisis point and has been only made worse by the pandemic. So how do we jumpstart this supply? Recently, my office's neighborhood renewal division has been out there with grants trying to incentivize the conversion of more abandoned properties into more affordable housing units. We're going to continue to look for opportunities and partnerships like this, but we've got to find a way to jumpstart the supply. Transportation is also a key to moving forward. Improving and connecting our transportation system will help invigorate our gateway cities, all of our regions, and improve access to areas where housing is more affordable. Residents need transit systems that they can rely on to get them to work on time and home again. No one wants hours of productivity wasted sitting in traffic. And if we're going to create jobs in every region of our state, if we're going to reduce costs that are straining our families, if we're going to do something about the climate crisis, then we have to invest in our transportation system. That starts with fixing crumbling bridges and roads. It means dramatically investing in public transit, our trains, our buses. And I want to be clear, this isn't just, Boston-centric. There are regional transit authorities that we have got to more invest in and build up so that people in the Pioneer Valley or Blackstone Valley or the Berkshires, the South Coast, Merrimack Valley are able to get around and about in a way that is efficient and works. And as we transition from to a clean energy future, having an electrified public transit system as a viable alternative for commuters is going to be essential. So no one should be left behind here. Our gateway cities, the South Coast, Western Mass, Central Mass. No, we've got to work to increase economic development in these areas. We've got to work to build a strong economy in every part of the state with some of these investments that I speak of in transportation and in housing, which are key. And then finally, I just want to say something about the workforce. As I mentioned at the outset, no matter where I go, businesses large and small across industries are struggling to find workers. And there are thousands of jobs available right now in manufacturing and healthcare technology that are going unfilled because we need people with the skills to fill them. And I don't have to tell you this, but what are we going to do to bridge this gap? We need to do a few things now. Invest in and partner in a super intentional, concentrated way, right, that we haven't done before with our vocational technical schools and community colleges to focus on the job training programs that we need to create or amplify or grow in sectors like computer science, technology, healthcare, and clean energy. We need to expand and really look at early college programs and create more partnerships between our high schools and our colleges, which will allow our young people to take college level courses and earn credits for free. Early college initiatives have already been proven to increase college enrollment for students of color and low income and first generation students. Over 60% of early college participants in the state are Black and Latino. And this is really important and an important investment that we should be making and exploring. As we look toward closing inequities in educational attainment and job training, additional and sustained investment in this initiative is going to be really important. And again, we only get there by working together. It's absolutely essential. Let's invest in our people, invest in our businesses, and build an economy where everyone can thrive. Now, looking to the future, climate, I think people recognize the severity of the situation and the challenge that climate presents. We know this is a real and immediate problem. We know that we need to act. We know right now that we're seeing urban centers overheat. We're seeing sea levels rise, coastlines and beaches erode, storms. I mean, we all see this, and we know, for example, here in Boston, where I am, Boston's experiencing some of the worst high tide flooding in the nation. And the World Bank recently ranked Boston as the 8th city in the world most vulnerable to flooding, 8th in the world, costing an estimated $230 million a year. Now, by 2050, sea levels in Boston and in other parts of the Northeast are likely to be about 16 inches higher than they were in 2000. And 2070, if you look ahead, it shows the seaport could flood on a monthly basis. So, the costs are real. The costs are very real, estimated to reach a cost annualized for the city of Boston alone of $1.4 billion. We've got commercial real estate that's at risk. We've got serious concerns here. So look, I know it sounds grim, but this is a huge opportunity for Massachusetts, and I think the urgency should inspire the action that we need and the work we need to do together. Last year, the legislature created a pretty strong roadmap for this work. Implementation has got to be centered on equity and achieved in partnership with communities most deeply impacted. It's been a focus of my office's work, from our Clean Air Initiative to strengthening regulatory procedures to protect vulnerable communities. We have to address that. We also need to focus on electrification. We know, what transmission contributes to in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And so working to electrify our buses, our trains, transit, also looking to electrify our buildings, homes, for those who can least afford the upgrades. We've got to find a way to support them, and that includes businesses. We also need to work closely with municipalities to identify some of the things that we need to do to build more climate resiliency into local infrastructure, so we don't have the heat islands, so that we're increasing the tree cover and the like. And then there's wind, offshore wind. I mean, our waters have the largest technical offshore wind potential of any state in the US. And the state's plan for 15 to 20 gigawatts of offshore wind is going to require an investment in workforce and business development that can and should and will, if we do it right, result in significant returns here. We can build on the nation-leading energy transition we started back in 2008, and we can transform our transportation and business sectors. These additional investments will put us, I believe, at a competitive advantage over other states in attracting new business. So to protect our municipalities, our businesses, and our residents from the impact of climate change, we've got to be really intentional with the federal dollars that are coming in. We've got to efficiently utilize ratepayer dollars. And I believe that in doing so, Massachusetts can and will show the rest of the country and the world that an ambitious approach, an equity-centered approach to climate change is not only possible, but actually profitable. In closing, I say that to all of you again, that I believe in the strength of partnerships and communication, and partnerships communication with the business community is absolutely essential to the work that all of us do in government. I'm going to continue to invite your input. My team will as well, on how we can build and deliver and implement a shared vision that really holds greater promise for residents across the state. So I look forward to your comments or your questions, and I hope to see you all out and about soon in person.
Thank you, Maura. Really appreciate that. You highlighted what is key to so many of AIM's members right now, which is that partnership, right? You really touched on all the things I think we're going to get to in our questions, which are top of mind for employers right now. Competitiveness, the workforce challenges that we have always sort of wrestled with, but the way COVID has changed it, and sort of needing to be flexible and adapting. Certainly your remarks about the intersection of climate, but also energy infrastructure and cost for employers. And then your comments generally about the cost of living and how difficult that is as it weaves into all these other things. But do want to say thank you for your comments on partnership, because it is so key. And I think particularly given how important the Attorney General's office is, as not only a key policymaker in the state, but certainly with respect to your oversight on a lot of these issues. We value the ability to always, we may not agree, but always be at the table and share our thoughts and be part of a wider conversation. So thank you for that. So let me turn it over to our questioners right now. We're going to start actually, we're going to bring Christina Fisher back. Again, Christina is the Public Policy Manager at Amazon, and Christina is going to ask our first question. Christina?
Great, thank you. We've seen in the wake of COVID a major shift in the workforce nationally, but also here in Massachusetts. Likewise, we saw how technology during the pandemic took a larger role in allowing businesses to operate and reach customers in new ways. How is your office prioritizing these workforce challenges to meet the needs of the future, retrain our workforce, and bolster industries as we hopefully move into the end of the pandemic? And what role does technology play in workforce training?
Great. Well, it's a great question, Christina. Technology is absolutely key, and it's going to continue to play an increasingly critical role in how we all operate going forward. And it's all the more reason why we need to make those investments in workforce training and retraining to ensure that we have the workers with the skills that we need. I think that COVID has forced us all as employers to innovate and do things differently. I can tell you, I never would have imagined, look, I run a law firm. I could never have imagined that we would be as productive, maybe even more productive through COVID, because in my work, in our industry, we were able to work remotely. That is not the case for all businesses or employers, but we really transitioned just in a matter of 2-3 weeks to getting everybody online and able to work from home. It's about 500-600 people. We saw the benefit of people gaining between 2 and 4 hours a day that they weren't commuting in certain instances, and instead were able to just work. We saw employees focus on health and wellness too. And I think as an employer, and again, not every employer has this luxury. I understand that, but to the extent that we were able to be more flexible with our workforce, it was imperative in terms of keeping up morale, and it actually yielded really good results in terms of productivity. So I think about some of the innovations, and I think about the fact that we're going to continue to operate with those. We're going to work remotely where we can. Folks are coming back to the office this week, but we'll be allowed to work remotely a certain number of days a week. I think the travel time, talk a lot about climate and emissions and transit. We learned that we can easily operate from our 4 offices around the state by video conference very, very effectively. We're even in court doing trials on Zoom. So that's just from my perch, some of the innovations. Let's keep them and use them going forward. I think about healthcare. I mean, look at telehealth, for example, something that was controversial and debated has proven to be really important in terms of actually delivering people care. So I think for all of us, it's like, let's look at what we've done and how we've innovated and keep what is good, what is more efficient, what is more effective. And, I think like as with anything, you don't know what you're capable of until you're tested and pushed. But having been tested and pushed, I will be somebody who supports those innovations and doing things a little bit differently. Sometimes you need a kick to be, realizing that things can be done a little bit differently. And I think COVID gave everyone that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, Maura. So the next question is actually from an amazing AIM member. Rehana Irani Famili is the Vice President of Business Resilience and Infrastructure Investment Program at National Grid. She is responsible for readiness in responding to major service disruptions and supporting the restoration efforts impacting over 20 million people across the Northeast. Rehana, what question do you have for the AG today?
Thank you, and thank you, Maura, for outlining your priorities for the next year. It's inspiring, and that urgency drives all of us. So with that, the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed in November, it offers really an unparalleled once-in-a-generation opportunity to improve the nation's infrastructure. And you pointed to a lot of that in your conversation, whether it's roads, bridges, or importantly, our energy infrastructure. As Massachusetts looks to the aggressive clean energy goals that we have, and to your words, leading the nation's energy transition, what do you think, how can the business community and utilities like us, National Grid, accelerate our efforts in building a resilient, clean system building skills and jobs that you talked about, and really fully taking advantage of this opportunity?
Oh, well, Rana, it's a great question. And let me just say, it is complicated, right? And I think the principles should abide that we need to be doing everything we can to address the climate situation for sure. And we have to move to a clean energy future. And I do believe that that can be a huge boon to Massachusetts. It's really, really important. Just to sort of, offer a few thoughts. So the money, right? I think between ARPA and the infrastructure bill, Massachusetts is going to get around $14 billion in federal funds that can be used for infrastructure. And we're also going to have the opportunity, in addition to that funding, to compete for billions more in grant programs. And I think that here, what can you do? Well, businesses and state governments have to work together to apply for, to compete, to go out and grab every single dollar available for Massachusetts. And I'm a competitor that way and would join others in seeking those funds. Over the next 5 years, we do have this once in a generation opportunity to invest billions of dollars in clean energy, transit, and the like, and bring the benefits of this clean energy transition to communities. And so I think it's about thinking strategically about how to best use that money, how to ensure that the state is prioritizing cost-effective investments to benefit the economy of the future. And this is why it's got to be a collaborative conversation with input from stakeholders. And not everything is going to make everyone happy. That's not the way the world works. But I think through collaboration, we can work to implement the strategy that will deliver the greatest return on investment. And investment, we've got to be making these investments soon. I mean, we really need to operationalize and utilize these federal infrastructure dollars to help fund the transition to electric heat and transportation systems. We've got to be able to work to prepare our distribution grid. I mean, this is an issue, right? We can have the power out there, but you got to get it somewhere. It's it's not going to help. It's not going to help our residents. It's not going to help our businesses. So distribution, how do we prepare our distribution grid for as much distributed clean energy as we can? And we should be using the money to make sure that the transmission grid is prepared to handle specifically the offshore wind turbines that Massachusetts is planning to build. I want all parts of this state to benefit. And I say this morning knowing that many of you are paying energy bills, twice what you paid last year, and this is a real issue. But I think we have to find a way to work together, use that money effectively in the investments, and just try to do this as quickly as possible, building and expanding our clean energy economy. And again, I want all regions to thrive from this. And I'm really interested in things like, how wind, for example, as an industry is going to benefit Central Mass and Western Mass with manufacturing and with things that can be developed. I mean, that we got to have equity and fairness here as we think about the investments of these dollars. So I hope that gives a little bit of perspective. And I certainly look forward to working with Grid and others on how we work to get there together, because I think people are on the same page in terms of generally where we need to go. There's a lot of debate about how we get there, but I hope we can collectively, collaboratively focus on the bigger picture here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Maura, for that. So many times, you're right, this is complicated. And, I think what we hear from members as it relates to the intersection of climate and energy costs is so much just, getting their perspective, right? Certainly everyone has the same goals and the same outlook. I think making sure the right people, to your point, are at the table and sharing how it's going to affect them on the ground day to day and finding a path that works is really so important. So really appreciate it. So our next question actually comes from Dominic Iano. Dominic is head of state government relations at Mass Mutual Life Insurance Company, headquartered in Springfield, Massachusetts. Dominic joined the company in 2018 and leads the advocacy and engagement strategy for Mass Mutual's legislative and regulatory priorities. Dominic is also a member of AIM's Government Affairs Committee. Morning, Dominic.
Morning. Hi, Maura. How are you? Good to see you.
And great, Dominic. Nice to see you.
Hey, thanks so much for mentioning early childhood education. As you know, our CEO, Roger Crandall, is a co-chair of the Massachusetts Business on Early Childhood Education. It's an organization of about 83 members now, representing 270,000 employees. It also has 20 organizations, including AIM. Thank you, John Regan and Brooke, for that. So it's a really important issue for us in the business community. We recognize there's a nexus between providing early childhood education and having a strong, diverse workforce. And you touched upon that in your remarks already, the impact, particularly on women and people of color. So I guess my question, maybe if you could expand a little bit more on your priorities in this space and maybe talk a little bit about the role you see the business community could have in helping define solutions.
Yeah, and I really applaud AIM for the work on this. I applaud the work of the Massachusetts Business Coalition for Early Childhood Education. I know the association has outlined some actions concretely that businesses can take to support equity and women in the workforce, including by providing things like childcare vouchers and considering on-site childcare. So I really appreciate the focus and the commitment to this work. I think from my perspective, you know, when wearing my hat as the CEO of this law firm, you know, you're only going to get out of people what you invest in them. And so, you know, right away when I took office, one of the first things I did was I implemented paid parental leave. We were the first state agency to do it. And, you know, honestly, that made a huge difference. It was a huge boost to morale for folks in the office. And again, productivity didn't suffer. You know, as people were out, others could absorb the work, and you know, it all has really paid off, and it was the right thing to do. Like many of you, we revisited our policies to become more accommodating of flexible work schedules, reduced schedules, offering remote work to give our team options to help them balance, you know, home and work obligations. But I will, you know, I guess I'd say a couple of things. It is absolutely critical. You're not going to probably get the right policies in place for your company or organization if you don't have representative voices at the table. And this gets to, you know, DEI efforts, which is not about a feel-good movement or about doing what is right. Of course, it's important to do what is right and just and fair. And as a former civil rights lawyer, I believe deeply in those tenets. It's also really good for the work within an organization. And I know if we had not revamped our practices when it came to how we hire, where we recruit from, how we maintain and invest in employees of color, you know, we would not be where we are today. And over the last 7 years, I've more than doubled attorneys and staff of color in my office. I am proud of that. I have an office that is majority women led and managed. And I am really proud of the team really for making that so central to the ethos of the various divisions and the like. And so, you know, these are some of the things that I think are sort of background principles. But on childcare, I've never you know, Massachusetts, we're home to the first public school in the country. We have such a proud tradition here, and yet, you know, we don't have the early childhood education, childcare that some other states have, and it just doesn't make sense. You know, it puts a huge strain on our families, on our workforce, and what is it doing for these little kids? I mean, it seems to me, you know, you make the investment early, and in the life of a child, the more you're doing between 0 and 3, it's going to be good for that child. It's going to be good for that family. It's going to be good for a workforce and for community. And so I appreciate the focus on this. My office, you know, to this day is flooded with calls and emails from parents worried about how they're going to pay high tuition for classrooms, some of which are closed, and childcare providers. You know, I've talked a lot with childcare providers too. I mean, this is a space where 92% of the folks in the space are female, 41% people of color. You know, I have been advocating for more support and funding there. And clearly, you know, what we need to do as a state is work to provide universal early education in Massachusetts. It's a new investment, but I believe it's the kind of investment that pays off. I mean, some studies show that for every dollar invested in early childhood education, you're going to see a return of between $4 and $16. Increased high school graduation and college, increased high school graduation rates, college enrollment rates, increases in personal earnings, and importantly, particularly from where I sit right now, decreases in criminal justice system costs, social welfare, and the like. And so I think that savings I think that expenditure will really pay off and increase tax revenue and economic growth in the long term here. But again, thank you for what you're doing. And you know, this isn't easy, but it's also an area where I think we should all keep talking. And I'd love to see us as a state move forward in this space. I think COVID has showed us how desperately fragile it was to begin with, and all the more we need to take the bull by the horns right now and take this on.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dominic. Appreciate it. Our next question comes from Pat Begowitz, who I know you know, Maura, and AIM knows her quite well. She is the president and co-owner of Onyx Specialty Paper, but more importantly, she is also an AIM board and executive committee member and has been integral in making AIM the voice for businesses throughout the Commonwealth. And I thank Pat for that. You know, Pat walks the walk and talks the talk, as folks who know her, having actually, along with her business partner, purchased assets of the former Midwest-Vaco Specialty Paper Division and really, you know, led the way to Onyx's success. So with that, Pat, take it away, and look forward to hearing your question.
Thanks, and thank you, Maura, for taking my question. And at the risk of sounding like a one-topic person, my question is about energy. You know, energy costs are on the rise, driven by increased natural gas prices due to supply constraints. And this puts Massachusetts businesses, particularly high energy use manufacturers like my company, at a significant disadvantage as we compete in national and global markets. As our state moves towards a fossil fuel-free future, how do you recommend providing support to manufacturers who have significant capital assets built around the use of fossil fuels in our processes beyond just heating, to ensure that we succeed and not go out of business?
Yeah, Pat, you know, this is the hard stuff, and I appreciate all of what you're saying, because you can't just wave a wand here. And you know, a couple of years ago, maybe just at the start of COVID, I don't know, it might have been June 2020, my office asked the Department of Public Utilities to open a look into the future of gas in the state. And really what that was about is about planning and what do we need to do to transition to a clean energy economy. And the reason it was framed as sort of an inquiry, a look into it, and the reason we raised it is because we thought it was really important that DPU as a regulator have input from a variety of stakeholders, including stakeholders like yourself, who are in the industry, manufacturing sector that relies on fossil fuels as part of the infrastructure. And how do you support them? How do you invest in them to make whatever investments are necessary around transitioning, but support in the meantime, recognizing that this is the only way that they are staying operating. And so, I think it is about that kind of conversation and that kind of collaboration. And there are some things in some industries, just like there are some households that are going to be a lot easier to electrify and move and move forward from fossil fuels to renewables. And then there are going to be other industries and businesses where it's going to be a lot more difficult. And we need to make sure that those industries and businesses get the support they need as we work to implement reforms. And we can't have, I know you're paying bills that, well, I don't even know what you're paying for bills right now, but they're higher than they were before because of all of what you alluded to. And, you've got people who are working, who are counting on that work, and we got to make sure that, you're able to survive. And, that's why I say this is a complicated space, but I think you've got to, if you're going to be in government and in any sort of regulatory position or policymaking position, you've got to understand and be mindful of taking account of what's happening out there on the ground and what the implications are and the kind of investment and support certain entities are going to need if we're ever going to get there. Because you can't just flip a switch or wave a wand overnight. And I say that as somebody who understands the urgency of the move, but nevertheless recognize that, we have to carefully map this out. That's, I guess, a general answer to the very real conundrum that you raised. And look, I think we continue to see new investments in technologies and other things that are going to be helpful and can be implemented. But that is very much a work in progress. And I was asked recently about a town bylaw that was going to ban gas hookups, and you also have got to be mindful there are a lot of people that can't afford heat pumps right now. And when we talk about housing stock, I think about these things. It's like, what are the implications and how do we work through that? Because you've got people, really in a range of lived experience right now. And the goal should be to try to, move us collectively forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. So our next question is actually from John Capone, who is managing partner at KPMG New England. And John actually handles both New England and upstate New York and is responsible for overseeing the delivery of high quality client service and development of market strategy, attracting and retaining key resources, and representing the firm in the market and the community. John, do you have a question for the AG this morning?
Thank you. Maura, thank you for your comments today. We at KPMG, we pride ourselves in helping both large and small businesses grow and thrive. And I loved your comments today. But my question is about retaining talent, and you kind of touched on it. And keeping Massachusetts vibrant, requires an economy that attracts and retains the best talent. And in a hybrid world where we're seeing large portions of the workforce now considering whether their work can be done from lower cost areas, how do you think about or view this as a threat to our talent? Or is it an opportunity to ensure Massachusetts continues to grow and support our business community? And we have to also kind of avoid the trap that you see from other states like California, New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, where they have very high rates of taxation that is causing companies and individuals that we see every day in the papers talk about how they're moving to low-cost areas like Texas and Florida. So how do you think about that when you think about investing in our community?
I think it's a real issue, John. And I guess in part, I'd love to have longer discussions with you and members about the issues that you're facing in attracting talent and retaining talent. What are the reasons that people are giving for leaving or refusing to return from Asheville to Massachusetts to go to work again? What are the concerns, and what are the shifts in the workplace dynamics and in the job market? And what do we need to do? I think the conversation has to be about what do we need to do as a state to ensure that Massachusetts has a competitive advantage. And I think that's another reason why the collaboration, the conversation between government and business is so important. Massachusetts, I think, is the greatest state in the country if you can afford to live here. And we've got to really celebrate and show what it is we offer here. I mean, I think in terms of education, I think in terms of quality of life, yes, we have high cost of living, and we've got, you know, some weather that's trying for all of us at times. But, you know, I look at, you know, and I talk to colleagues right now in Texas and Florida, and, you know, look at some of the policies, right? I mean, Texas has banned abortion, which actually is a real economic issue for so many women, determining whether or not they're able to stay in school, go to school, stay in the workforce. Look at the attacks right now in Texas and Florida on LGBTQ kids, and you can report somebody for being gay. I mean, these are not the kind of environments where, you know, that I think should be attractive to people if they think about the future and the well-being and the happiness of their families. And, you know, I just think we need to think about all the good things that we have going on here and find ways to sell it, you know, to really sell it. And, you know, I've said for a long time, I want Massachusetts to be the life sciences epicenter of the world. Like, we've got real opportunity here and real potential, but we got to build it out, and we've got to show people. And, you know, as an employer of 600 people, I know that it's not easy, you know, and you've got to offer, you've got to work on the policies, you know, that you offer. You've got to make it a comfortable environment. I talked about our DEI efforts, where, you know, a lot of people would come and attorneys of color would go to school here and then leave to go practice in other parts of the country. And, you know, building a community and environment in which, you know, they feel like this is a great place to build a career and raise a family is something that, you know, we try to work on out of the office. And it's just an example. So I hope we can have more conversations about this. And again, you know, reducing the cost of living. I mean, I know this is it's a big driver in terms of people's decision making around where they want to set up shop, where they want to live. And I think that, you know, it's going to be an interesting time to figure out, you know, who, for those who can allow remote work, you know, what are you going to do with that, and what is that going to look like? Downtown Boston, it's sad to see so hollowed out. You know, so many of the ancillary stores and restaurants and coffee shops and the like, you know, have really suffered with people not coming downtown, for example, in Boston every day. So there's a lot we've got to think about and proactively plan and engage on right now. And I'd love to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, so would I. I think that's right on point. And it is a little sad when you're around Boston to see the businesses close. And we're very active right now as we come out of Omicron to get our people back into the office for exactly that. And I think there's a lot of things that you talked about earlier about, and you talk about early stage life sciences, right? The investments that were made by Governor Patrick and Governor Baker and hopefully Governor Healey that put Boston as the leader of life sciences. And I think when you talk about artificial intelligence and cyber, there are other industries we can do really well. And I think a partnership that thinks about innovation, I think is exactly where you want to go, and we're happy to help.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I do think, you know, I don't want to see happen what happened with high tech and the move, you know, from here and what we lost, you know, to Silicon Valley. I don't want to see that happen here in our state with some of the really thriving just powerhouse, you know, industries and innovations that we've got here. You know, we've got to find a way to support, incent, and grow those. And I think that that'll redound to the benefit of people across the state if we do.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Maura. Appreciate that. We have one final question, a quick question, actually from Adam Martinetti, who's head of state affairs at Point 32 Health, a regional nonprofit plan that operates throughout New England. Adam, do you want to go ahead and ask the AG a quick question?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, Madam Attorney General. You've touched on equity a couple of times, both workforce and climate. We're thinking a lot about health equity here at Point 32 Health, both with our foundation as well as health disparities and how we can address health disparities in the Commonwealth. I know your office just had a conference yesterday on Black health and wellness. Just curious perspective on health equity, how we can address it in the Commonwealth, how we can marshal our significant healthcare resources to improve health equity, address disparities in health outcomes.
Well, thanks for raising it, Adam. This is something I care a lot about, and we spent a lot of time on as an office. And I think that the healthcare disparities that have long existed were only exacerbated and really brought to light during COVID. Yeah, yesterday I convened with Dr. Malika Marshall and a number of providers a conversation about Black health and wellness. And you know, people probably don't know, but Black women here in Massachusetts are twice as likely to die and suffer in pregnancy and in childbirth. And you know, the rate of opioid overdoses and addiction among Black men in the state grew 70% last year. And you know, the needs are so pronounced. Conversation yesterday, most of the providers talked about the dominant need being mental health, you know, and the need to have more services there. So a year ago, my office put out a report on 5 ideas that I think we need to be taking to address healthcare disparities. The first is we actually need to see it. We need to collect and report on the data. Robust data collection is going to be the first step in helping to identify those disparities and then more equitably target the resources to address those disparities and importantly to track progress. So first, collect the data and then make sure that we have the clinical healthcare tools that are there to promote equity. As I say, telehealth is a really good invention, and you know, we should keep that in place because people were able to access care and talk to their provider through a telehealth means that, you know, is a big difference when you don't have to, you know, take an Uber and leave a kid alone at home to get downtown to see a doctor, or you know, you're not left stuck going to the emergency room late at night when your kid has an earache and really all you need is the ability to get a quick prescription. So it's like, you know, what are the tools in place that we need to continue that will promote equity, and that really means delivering healthcare to communities and people who have needed it and have been disproportionately, you know, kept out. We also need to invest in workforce development. Our current workforce doesn't represent the diversity of the patient population it serves. And so, you know, I applaud healthcare providers and what they're doing to expand inclusive educational opportunities, job training programs, and the like. We know, you know, cultural competency, you're going to get better results and better care when you have the diverse workforce that understands lived experience, that understands the needs of a range of patients it serves. We need to target, and finally I'll say this, you know, it is so frustrating to me that we end up spending so much money on things that have gotten just way worse. They didn't need to get so bad. So I think a key part of disparities too is focusing on the root causes of health equity. And that's why my office spends a lot of time going after, you know, bad environmental situations, bad housing, unsafe housing situations, you know, public safety. I mean, all these things, social, economic, and environmental conditions, as you know, are key drivers in determining like the health profile of a person and determining the health outcome. And I think more investment, you know, up front, it's like if you change the oil, great. But if you don't, you know, and everything seizes, you know, it's a different scenario. And I think that more intentionality around the social determinants of health would go a long way in this state. So we're going to continue to work on this. It's a super important topic. And, you know, I just think in the state of Massachusetts, home to universal health care, with the incredible collection of healthcare providers, you know, we can really get after it, and we need to when it comes to addressing the healthcare disparities that we see in our state. And I will also say something too about other regions, because, you know, I am always struck when I go to Northern Berkshire County or Southern Berkshire County, you know, pockets of, you name it, you know, Worcester County, down the South Coast. you know, there are a lot of people who don't have the transportation to get to the doctors, just don't have the money, the means to be able to go see someone. You know, there's always, there's just like a bunch of factors that play into this. And I think from a statewide perspective, you got to recognize that there are different kinds of healthcare disparities out there that need to be addressed. And you got to pay attention to the needs of regions across the state.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Maura.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, would love to partner with you now, in the future. It'd be great.
Great.
Thank you, Maura. And thank you for doing what we try to do all the time at AIM, which is really be an advocate for all businesses across the state and recognizing that the challenges of those in the eastern part of the state is not necessarily the same as those in Cape Cod or out in the western part of the state, et cetera. So I can't thank you enough for being here today. You're incredibly busy. Your office and you personally are a fantastic advocate, you know, for our businesses, and can't thank you enough again for taking the time to be here.
Well, it was a privilege to be with all of you this morning. Thanks for what you do. Many thanks, Brooke, for coordinating all of this, and we look forward to continued dialogue and conversation with AIM and its members.
Absolutely, as do we. I also want to thank Christina and Amazon for their sponsorship and participation in today's webinar. I'm going to go really quickly because I know we're after time, but as I mentioned at the outset, I have a fantastic government affairs team. You can see them all right here. Here's their contact info. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to them. We'd love to get you more involved. Obviously, you know that we have a lot of committees here at AIM. We have our membership and government affairs team. If there's any sort of issue you care about, you want to get on our email preference list or be part of our subject matter expert groups on specific issues, please reach out to membership. I want to highlight a couple of events that are coming up that are going to be fantastic. On March 10th, we have our 2022 Employment Guide webinar. We have our fantastic What's Your Aim that we do regularly coming up on March 17th. And then, of course, what we're really excited about is our executive forum on March 25th, where we're really highlighting our minority supplier and corporate procurement opportunities. If this is something you care about, and the Attorney General spoke about it again, right? This is going to be a real way to get more details about how you can get involved, how AIM can help you, but also resources out there to really take this issue on and, again, walk the walk. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't thank our other sponsors, National Grid, Mass Mutual, Onyx Specialty Paper, KPMG, Point32 Health, and again, Amazon. Without their support, we couldn't do these programs. So thank you all again for attending today's Commonwealth conversation. Thank you, Maura, for all you do. And I look forward to seeing you all at our next event here at AIM. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.